name's Madison Kennedy, and I'm in the Women's and Gender Studies 4310 Feminist Thought and Theories class. This is my project for the Thought to Action because I have been spending the last semester doing my research in order to pursue thought in action and activism. So my first introduction to feminism was actually in high school. I had just started going to a public high school, only part-time. Up until that point, I had been homeschooled in order for my education to be a religious experience, and I had no introduction into feminist values other than the bad feminists. So when I was in high school, I started really questioning my sexuality, something I had struggled with for many years but didn't understand, and in high school I finally had words for it, which led me to looking into some of the inequalities, such as the absence of marriage equality, and I started getting really angry. I didn't have any prospects or desire to be married, but the fact that I could not legally get married started to really bother me, and I needed more than just the fact that I wanted marriage, because that didn't seem as concrete to me as other things. And so the more I looked into it, the more I realized how much deeper it goes than just the ability to marry. It's also the ability to adopt or foster children, the ability to get your same-sex partner to be a legal parent of a child you've already birthed, to get tax rights, to get insurance rights, to even be able to see your spouse in the hospital. These issues started really getting down to the core of me. And the more I looked into this, the more I started really becoming passionate about equality, fighting for equality, and that led me on a different path to looking into feminism as a whole, as in the wage gap, and starting looking into racial inequalities, and just all of these things that were systemic injustices to everybody who's not a middle-class white man. So that was my first introduction to feminism, and it really was centered around queer feminism because it was primarily rooted in my own sexuality. The more I started looking into queer feminism, the more I realized that queer does not actually just mean all those under the LGBTQIA+ umbrella. Queer just means other than what society deems fit. So whether that's gender, whether that's sexuality, whether that's race, anything that's other than society's norms falls under the queer umbrella. So for me, queer feminism was my introduction into looking at inequalities throughout the world that didn't just fall under sexuality and gender identity. That was my introduction. And then as I started preparing, I really started getting invested. And when I came to college and became a Women's and Gender Studies minor, I just really blew up with queer feminism and feminist thought and theory that I had just never been introduced to in my life. So many people in my classes were very familiar with popular feminist names, but growing up I had never even heard the name Gloria Steinem. And I felt really behind. I felt that academia was too much for me, but I also didn't feel comfortable in activist settings because I am not necessarily an activist type of person. So I just really didn't know where I fit in feminism until I started working on research. I had done research papers. I'm very good. I really like to research and write about it, and I had started talking to Trisha Earle as the Women's and Gender Studies conference for the advancement of women started coming up and proposals began to be accepted and opened. She asked me why I hadn't proposed in the 3 years that I had been a Women's and Gender Studies minor, why I had not yet given anything as a proposal to present at this conference. I started to doubt myself. I didn't believe that I had anything worth presenting, and she said simply, "Do you have a research paper that you've written?" Because of that, I started talking to the professor that I had actually written the paper for, and that paper turned into physical research. That paper was the school system in general and how they treat gender nonconforming students, and that turned into thinking about West Texas culture that seems to be so silencing and so not opening to students, especially gender nonconforming students. While it tends to get better for students who identify as a different sexuality than heterosexuality, it still really struggles with gender nonconformance and transgender students. So I wanted to look into specifically how West Texas high schools are treating their gender nonconforming students, whether they have the resources, whether they have trainings for students. So based on the original research paper, it found that students did not have safety in their schools, the climate was unacceptable, and other students who weren't under the LGBTQIA status often did not even recognize the harsh climate that their school had toward these students. And the administrators really wanted to do something. School counselors talked over and over that even though they may have personal differences and religious beliefs that they may not agree with this, all they wanted to do was help their students. They all had at least one student who was gender nonconforming in their school at that point, and they didn't necessarily know what to do, how to help these students, where to find resources, or even the money to get any training to help these students. They wanted to be able to help parents, give lessons to parents, and provide some kind of support for the parents and structure in that, but there was no available resources. So I wanted to look into West Texas high schools, whether the administration is doing anything, whether there's any money being put towards these programs. I have just started this research. We are beginning to collect data now. And when I get the results, my hope is to get this published, primarily just to get this information out there. West Texas high schools have come a long way since the Education of Shelby Knox documentary was filmed, but it's still not there yet. We still have so long to go. And being able to get a study like this published and bring attention to the fact that West Texas high schools are not a forgiving climate for these students needs to be information that is known. I also help to use the results from this and the students' background. I will be looking at students at first and then going on to teachers, staff, and faculty, as well as the administrative side of it, to get their opinions on what's going on in their school. I hope to use all of this data and the results to create a theory, a framework, and model in order to create support structures within these schools. So gender neutral bathrooms, locker rooms, support systems, no bullying policies, no tolerance policies for bullying on these issues, support systems for these students and for the parents, as well as funded trainings for all teachers, staff, and admin in order to properly be an ally for these students. So I hope to use academia where I am most confident, because being an activist and being on the street, while I would love to be that person, that's not who I am, and that's not where my strong suit lies. My strong suit lies in academia, and I like to use my academia to create a form of activism that is rooted and grounded in my scholarship and my theoretical frameworks. So, like many others, I hope to pursue a career in academia and in higher education, and often it feels like that's not the feminist way, that's not the activist way. But through my own experience, I've been able to use my comfort level, my confidence, and where I know that I can be the best form of a feminist, that it can create activism. Like Roxane Gay said in her Bad Feminist Essays, I'm often full of contradictions, and I don't want to be a spokesperson. I can't be the person on stage at rallies creating these activist works. But I can do research, and I can create frameworks, and I can implement policies and structures within school systems to help these adolescents and to make life better for them so that they can go out and be the activists, be the people on stage where I don't feel comfortable being. I can still use my passions and my confidence and my area of expertise to use academia as my form of activism, and I hope to inspire others to do the same. Find where your passion lies, find where you're confident, whether it be art, music, writing, or even being the person who steps up, who organizes a rally, and who can get up and organize people and inspire others to pursue activism. I hope to inspire others to pursue activism in the way that is best suited for them. Feminism is not a one-size-fits-all identity, and you have to use what you do best in order to create the best form of activism, the best changes, and the changes that will really connect with you, that you find personal.